The National News Desk, locally covered, nationally connected. Global tariffs take effect. Just how much money is being brought in every month, and how much more could we see pumped into the American economy?
Our ultimate goal is to end this conflict, get the parties to the table, see the ceasefire and the long and enduring peace.
President Trump says he will do whatever it takes to end the killing. What we now know about the potential upcoming meeting between him and Vladimir Putin. And not so healthy eating. Just how much ultra-processed food do Americans eat a day? Why the troubling numbers show diets may be getting better. This is the National News Desk, America's News Now. I'm Dee Dee Gatton, and after months of announcements and delays, U.S. tariffs on imports from dozens of countries are in effect today. While some analysts believe these tariffs may lead to higher prices for consumers, Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick told Fox News Business Today the immediate impact will be higher revenues for the country.
So think about $50 billion a month, and that's where we are now. And then you're going to get the semiconductors, you're going to get pharmaceuticals, you're going to get all sorts of additional tariff money coming in. And as the president says, this could continue to head towards and ultimately reach $1 trillion.
President Trump is defending his recent firing of the former Bureau of Labor Statistics Commissioner Eric McIntyre following a jobs report he claimed was manipulated for political purposes. Today, Trump brought in economist Stephen Moore of the Heritage Foundation to go over the numbers.
I was telling the president that he did the right thing in calling for a new head of the Bureau of Labor Statistics, because this shows that over the last 2 years of the Biden administration, the BLS overestimated job creation by 1.5 million jobs. That's Mr. President, that's a gigantic error. And I don't know if she's, I'm not making
It might not have been an error, that's the bad part. If it was an error, it would be one thing. I don't think it's an error. I think they did it purposely.
President Trump nominates Stephen Miren to serve on the Federal Reserve Board of Governors temporarily. He is the chair of the White House's Council of Economic Advisors. He'll fill the vacancy left by Adriana Kugler, a Biden appointee who resigned last week. If approved by the Senate, Miren will serve out the rest of Kugler's term through the end of January. Some conservatives claim banks are being weaponized against people for political or religious beliefs, likening it to social media censorship. As the National News Desk, Matt Gelka reports, a new executive order from the president aims to change that.
It's been a long-running gripe from President Trump.
Many conservatives complained that the banks are not allowing them to do business within the bank, and that included a place called Bank of America.
Both Trump and the First Lady have claimed cancellation by the banking industry, with the president alleging J.P. Morgan Chase stopped doing business with him.
I was loaded up with cash, and they told me, "I'm sorry, sir, we can't have you. You have 20 days to get out." I said, "You got to be kidding. I've been with you for 35, 40 years.
Bank of America's CEO responded this week to conservatives' complaints, saying they do business with everyone.
We have 70 million consumers, and we're the biggest small business lender. So that's not it. We look at it based on risk.
The White House wants to crack down on debanking, a broad term used when someone is rejected by a bank for a wide variety of reasons. The Trump administration wants to remove reputational risk language as a factor to deny a customer. Banks could potentially face fines if they're found in violation, and they could be punished if they were found to have already done it. South Carolina Republican Senator Tim Scott introduced legislation in the spring to get rid of the reputational risk regulatory language. And some in the GOP allege that the government collected information from banks after the January 6, 2021 attack on the Capitol.
After January 6, 2021, the FBI sends an email to Bank of America, says, "We want all the credit card information, debit card purchases, credit card purchases of anyone who was in the Washington, D.C. area on January 5th, 6th, or 7th. And they asked for that information without a warrant.
While financial institutions have denied they're discriminating based on political or religious affiliation, many have also welcomed deregulation. Banks are not required to tell customers why their accounts are being closed, and they also can't say if there was suspicious activity, often leaving people guessing about what happened. Reporting in Washington, I'm Matt Gelka for the National News Desk, America's News Now.
6 soldiers at Fort Stewart who tackled an active shooter on base yesterday are being rewarded as heroes. Army Secretary Daniel Driscoll awarded medals to the 4 men and 2 women who helped stop the shooter at the base in Georgia.
One of the soldiers tackled the person, so just think about this. They were unarmed and ran at and tackled an armed person who they knew was actively shooting their buddies, their colleagues, their fellow soldiers. Another soldier jumped on top of the person to subdue them until federal law enforcement was able to arrive.
The suspect, 28-year-old Army Sergeant Cornelius Radford, will likely be transferred to a military detention center. Army officials say they won't speculate what his motive was. 5 soldiers were shot. 2 remain hospitalized, but they are expected to make a full recovery. In Washington, D.C., 9 counts against Elias Rodriguez have been unveiled, including hate crimes and murder in the killings of Israeli embassy staffers Yaron Lishinsky and Sarah Milgram. Rodriguez was reportedly heard shouting "Free Palestine" after he shot them. Prosecutors will have to prove he was motivated by anti-Semitism. But today, the U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia says Rodriguez's own words will be used against him.
He also posted one of his postings on social media: "Please, please, please, God, please vaporize every Israeli."
Attorney Pirro said she has begun the process to seek the death penalty against Elias Rodriguez, but the final decision rests with Attorney General Pam Bondi. Tonight, U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement is in the midst of an aggressive recruitment campaign for new employees and agents. It's all part of an expanded campaign by the Trump administration to deport those in the country illegally. As the White House touts the results, critics decry the methods. Christine Frizzell brings us a glimpse at the clashes playing out nationwide.
The aggressive approach by Immigration and Customs Enforcement carries on, especially in so-called sanctuary cities like Los Angeles. This raid outside a Home Depot reportedly involved ICE agents hiding inside a truck before making arrests, according to witness accounts.
A Penske truck rolled up and was telling folks that they were looking for 10 hard workers. And as day laborers gathered up, they took advantage of that opportunity and they rolled up the truck, and ICE just started popping out and trying to gather as many individuals as they could.
These types of enforcement actions playing out nationwide, with top Trump border officials insisting they will continue.
The reason we're doing that, because if we don't, we send a message to the whole world: it's okay to cross the border illegally. It's a crime, but don't worry about it. As long as you don't commit another crime, there's no one looking for you. If that's the message we send to the whole world, you're never going to fix this issue.
Border Czar Tom Homan also pushing back against claims of inhumane conditions for migrants at Alligator Alcatraz in Florida, including reports of worms in their food and wastewater on the floor.
I walked through the detainee facilities, I walked through the medical facilities, I walked through the cafeteria. I had them show me, what did you feed these people today? I saw the lunch what they fed them. They ate better yesterday than I am eating today.
Meanwhile, in New York, 3 Democratic lawmakers were denied entrance at a Brooklyn detention facility for not following protocol. They argue they've been told migrants are being held in, quote, deplorable conditions.
And Section 527 allows us the oversight responsibilities to go in there and see what is going on.
As these clashes play out across the country, the effort by the Trump administration continues to grow. The new budget bill included about $165 billion, most of which for immigration and border enforcement. Of that, $45 billion is slated specifically for the expansion of immigrant detention facilities around the country. Didi?
And Christine, any idea about how this money will be spent?
Well, for starters, beds, and more beds. A new facility is slated to open up in Indiana with 1,000 beds. Tom Homan said they just don't have enough places to put people once they're arrested. There is also a huge campaign to recruit as many new ICE agents as possible. They're offering some a $50,000 a year or $50,000 bonus. And they've also removed age limits to try to get as many people to apply as possible.
Yep, some new incentives we've been learning about recently. Live from Washington, D.C., Christine Frizzell, thank you. Today, a federal judge rules new construction on Florida's alligator Alcatraz must stop for now, as attorneys argue whether the facility violates environmental laws. Under the ruling, the facility can continue to hold detainees, but workers will not be allowed to add any new paving or infrastructure for the next 2 weeks. Environmental groups and the Miccosukee tribe argue the project threatens wetlands and the protected plants and animals that live there in that area. The Texas State House remains at a standstill, and 57 Democrats remain out of the state. The FBI will now get involved to locate the members, according to U.S. Senator John Cornyn, who asked them to find and arrest the absentee lawmakers. Texas's governor called for their civil arrest on Monday, but Illinois' Governor J.B. Pritzker says don't expect any arrests to happen anytime soon.
The reality is that all that he has said, Cornyn, is that the FBI has been authorized to locate the Texas House Democrats. Nothing more. And you know why? Because there is no federal law that allows them to arrest Texas Democrats who are here visiting the state of Illinois.
As far as the members themselves and what they are prepared to do, Democrat James Tallarico told the National News Desk this morning none of the members have yet to break the law.
We Texas Democrats are using a tool that is protected in our state constitution. Breaking quorum is something we are allowed to do in our state constitution. It's how the minority can check the majority when they overreach.
Meanwhile, Vice President J.D. Vance is in Indiana today, where he met with Governor Mike Braun. The two are scheduled to attend a GOP fundraiser this evening. Following the meeting this afternoon, Braun told reporters the two discussed several topics, including redistricting. When pressed on whether any agreement was reached, he said, quote, "We listened." The suspected shooter of two Minnesota lawmakers and their spouses pleads not guilty. Vance Belter appeared in federal court today to face murder, stalking, and firearms charges. He's accused of killing State Representative Melissa Hortman and her husband, Mark, and wounding State Senator John Hoffman and his wife, Yvette. If convicted, Belter could face the death penalty. A third person, we have learned, has died in New York City from the Legionnaire's outbreak that started in Harlem 2 weeks ago. More than 70 others across 5 zip codes in the city, they have gotten sick. The disease is a type of pneumonia caused by bacteria that grows in warm water. It can lead to symptoms like shortness of breath and muscle aches. City health officials continue to investigate the source of the outbreak. They believe cooling towers could be a likely source of the bacteria. The majority of calories for Americans' diet is from ultra-processed food. That is according to a new report from the CDC. Over 2 years, from August 2021 to August 2023, adults consumed about 53% of calories from ultra-processed food. The amount among children, that was higher, with about 62% on average. The good news, that is a decrease from 2017 to 2018, when adults consumed about 56% and children nearly 66%. Coming up, the change President Trump wants to make to the U.S. Census and the impact it would have on our lawmakers. Then, a new twist in the effort to end the war in Ukraine. What President Trump now says about his willingness to negotiate. And later, the state that may have just seen its first ever locally acquired case of malaria. We'll have the details when we come back. The nation is watching Texas to see how their maps could change in the next election cycle. But now, President Trump is seeking to recalculate how every state would need to proportion their congressional maps. President Trump is calling on the Commerce Department to create a new U.S. Census that excludes non-legal residents. If enacted, this would cause a nationwide upheaval of congressional seats. In a social media post here, Trump said, quote, "People who are in our country illegally will not be counted in the census. The nation has historically counted every person in the U.S., not just citizens, for the census. It is unclear if any changes would be done before the next census is due in 2030. Important to note, President Trump tried to make similar changes in his first term, but the Supreme Court ruled 5-4 that the specific attempt to change the 2020 census violated certain protections under the Administrative Act. But the High Court did not rule that a citizenship question on the census is in and of itself inherently unconstitutional. The makeup of the court has changed, of course, since 2019, potentially giving President Trump an extra vote, making it possible a new change to the census could be upheld by the Supreme Court justices. Meantime, the largest state in the union, California, dealing with potential upcoming redistricting problems of a different nature, losing the state population. It's a trend that started in 2020 and continues today, and in large part of that is financial.
That's driven by the high cost of living and especially the high cost of housing. So the main reasons why people move, just in the study of migration and populations over the years, there's kind of the big three, which is, they move for jobs, they move to be closer to family, or they move because of cost of living.
Nationally, unemployment claims continue to rise. The latest numbers out of the Labor Department show an increase for the second week in a row. Still, the 4-week average slightly dropped from 1 month ago. These are the first employment numbers given since Trump fired the head of the agency that produces it last Friday.
Does Putin have to meet with Zelensky in order and before you and Putin have to meet? Or
No. They would like to meet with me, and I'll do whatever I can to stop the killings.
A new turn in President Trump's efforts to end the war in Ukraine. President Trump told reporters today there is no condition that needs to be met before he meets with Russian President Vladimir Putin, reversing messaging out of the White House just last night that indicated the president wanted the adversaries to come together. This followed a statement by the Russian president that he is not opposed to meeting with Zelensky, but isn't ready to do so yet.
I've already said many times that I generally have nothing against this possibility, but certain conditions must be met for this. But unfortunately, we are still far from creating such conditions.
President Trump said a meeting could happen as early as next week. Putin floating the idea of meeting in the United Arab Emirates. There was no official meeting date yet. Today, President Trump sidestepped a question about pushing back his deadline for a ceasefire, saying it's up to Putin, and he remains disappointed with the Russian president. The EPA is canceling $7 billion in grants for solar projects. The Biden-era Solar for All program aimed to bring renewable energy to over 900,000 lower-income households, I should say. The goal was to shift towards cleaner power while also lowering energy bills. The EPA administrator says authority for the program was eliminated under the One Big Beautiful Bill. Smoke from the Canadian forest fires is still reducing air quality in parts of the U.S. As you take a look at the map, all of that yellow and orange here, it is becoming less intense, but it has now moved further south into South Carolina. There are nearly 500 out-of-control fires in Canada right now, according to its Interagency Forest Fire Center. This year has already had the third highest number of acres burned since data collection began. 2023 had the highest, followed by 1995. People over 80 who still have great memory have key differences in their brains. We are learning from a new Northwestern University study that the area of the brain linked to thought processes, attention, and motivation is thicker in these so-called superagers, and they have bigger cells in the area associated with memory and learning. They are also highly social, active in their communities, and autonomous. A newborn baby in Massachusetts has a suspected case of the dangerous tick-borne Powassan virus. It is rare, with only 24 cases nationwide this year. Lily is in the hospital with a long road ahead. The National News Desk, John Perrick reports.
She's slowly coming down from seizure medication, which is great.
5-week-old Lily is slowly recovering from a danger her parents could barely see, let alone knew nothing about.
Never heard of the Powassan, ever in my entire life.
Lily was just born on June 30th and may be the youngest person ever infected with Powassan virus. Her family believes the tick bite happened after a walk near the family's home on the vineyard.
I found this tiny, the teeniest one on her ankle. I picked it off. Like a week later, she started getting a fever of 102. I said, I'm taking her right in.
The virus can infect a person within 15 minutes of a bite. In this case, Lily's parents say she experienced brain swelling and needed help breathing.
Unfortunately, it doesn't have specific therapies. So beyond supportive care, there's no treatment.
Doctors say tick prevention is key by wearing clothing treated with chemicals and using repellent with DEET.
The longer a tick attaches to you, the greater the chance it will spit enough pathogens into you to cause disease.
More testing will confirm if Lily was infected with Powassan. For her parents, her health is the main concern. They're hoping to take her home soon, but unsure how the disease will impact her future.
Coming up next, the violent crimes committed by an El Salvadoran woman awaiting deportation in Maryland. We'll have that story right after this. Reporters all across the country in your neighborhoods covering issues that matter to you. We are taking the pulse of America, and we start in Washington, where a woman may have the first case of malaria acquired in that state.
The Tacoma Pierce County Health Department is now working to determine how a local woman contracted malaria without leaving the state.
Typically, when people get malaria, they've acquired it through travel to a country where malaria is more common, and then they get diagnosed when they come back to Washington. In this case, the patient doesn't have any travel where we would expect her to have gotten malaria.
Health officials believe she could have gotten infected here in Washington state. The woman was diagnosed last weekend and is now recovering while undergoing treatment. But the main question remains on how she got infected. Washington state typically sees between 20 to 70 cases of malaria each year, all of them related to travel. But if this case is confirmed as locally acquired, it would mark a first for Washington. Despite that, health officials say the risk of being infected with malaria remains very low.
Tucked away inside the George H. Fallon ICE Detention Center sits 33-year-old Norma Reyes Carbajal, who's awaiting deportation to her home country of El Salvador based on a final order of removal.
Well, this woman needs to be removed from the United States because she's an illegal alien.
Along with being in the country illegally, Reyes Carbajal is convicted of voluntary manslaughter and using a handgun in a violent crime. Spokesperson for the National Police Association, Betsy Smith.
But this woman, like 73% of current ICE detainees, has a pretty significant criminal history.
A single lightning bolt caused his home to go up in flames, leaving the roof charred and interior destroyed, ruining as well some of the family's most prized possessions like their art. Thankfully, no one was hurt, but they are still searching for their family dog. This all happened last Thursday when the Old Fort Volunteer Fire Department says they saw fire coming through the windows and smoke coming from the roof. The homeowners thankfully were not home, but showed up shortly after the fire started in a state of shock.
It's surreal. Like you sit and you think, well, that's not it. And you turn your head and you look and you're like, yes, that's our home.
And they're staying at a rental home for the time being.
President Donald Trump announcing today as National Purple Heart Day. August 7th has unofficially been a day to recognize the sacrifices of our veterans and their families and what they have done for our country going back to the country's infancy. But today, President Trump signed a new order officially recognizing the recipients. The first Purple Hearts were created on this date by General George Washington back in 1782.
Just as General Washington did 243 years ago, today we give our everlasting thanks to you and your unbelievable families. We want to thank you very much for being here. It's my great honor.
Forever grateful for the service members' sacrifices and bravery. We invite you to join us again this evening as we hear from senior legal fellow at the Heritage Foundation, Hans von Spakovsky, about the Texas standoff.